Good morning and welcome to Great Tree Zen Women's Temple. I saw a finger. I didn't know if that was, wait. This morning's speaker is Meredith McIntosh. We have heard from Meredith on a regular basis and we are anticipating our time together. Tejo, would you do the opening sutra?
More direct, right?
Yeah, we're low.
Yeah, so when we look up there, sorry, I don't know where to look. And unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to, remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's teaching.
And now a short statement on dana. In Buddhism, when Zen practitioners share their understanding of the teachings and practice, it is offered freely as a practice of dana paramita. Dana is a Pali word that means generosity or to give freely. And this practice is done without expectation of getting something in return. This is the spirit of speaking about the Dharma. Other ways to practice dana is to offer support to those who do the teaching and to support places of spiritual practice and to give without judgment or expectations when opportunities arise. Those who share the teachings at Great Tree do so on a dana basis. Please support their practice by giving what you can. Meredith, do you have a place you want us to send dana to?
It can, I hadn't thought of that. I don't know. I guess I could put my address in the chat.
Okay, that'd be good. That'd be good. Thank you. Okay. Our speaker today, your talk is called Divesting Holds That Hold Us. Meredith McIntosh is a longtime student of the late Tangen Harada Roshi of
Bukkokuji.
Bukkokuji Monastery in Japan. She's a certified Alexander technique teacher, NC licensed massage therapist, and a teaching and performing arts musicians. Both her self-study and teaching are rooted in the common ground between Zen practice and awareness of the body-mind movement in daily activities and the performing arts. Welcome, Meredith.
Hi, thank you. I'd just like you to just sense yourself as you are, just as you are, and I guess that's all I'll say right now, but just see what kind of shape and sense you have of yourself, however you want to do that at the moment. And I'm going to read the quote that I gave to Daigu to put on the flyer. So I'll read that now, and if I remember, I'll read it again at the end. So I want you to just sense yourself here now as I read this quote from Walt Whitman. Gently, but with undeniable will, divesting myself of the holds that would hold me, I inhale great draughts of space. The east and the west are mine, and the north and the south are mine. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness. And from there, I'd like to talk a little bit about what's called vestibular directions. And that's something that we all have naturally, and it has to do with our balance and our sense of space and balance in ourselves and in our environment. You can leave your eyes open or they can be closed as I speak through the different vestibular directions. They're very basic, but so I wanted to just open with that. One of the vestibular directions is front and back. And so I want you to sense from inside your self, just coming out through your bones and your skin and your muscles, and just picture and just image continuing that direction way out in the front of you, past any walls, through all the space. I mean, really as far as you can imagine, through the mountaintops and across the ocean that they might come to, even crossing, going still in that direction and floating off into space as the earth curves away from it. And adding that to the front, it's the back, behind you, from inside your bones, through your muscles and out your skin and through the walls behind you and through the space and mountains. And maybe over a different ocean as it crosses. And then on out into the atmosphere as the earth again curves away from it. Just as far as your imagination can take you. And now to the left and right of you in the same way. We'll maybe just go one at a time to the left first. In the same way that you're coming from inside, wiggling through bones and ligaments and tendons and skin and out. There's no problem with going right through a rock. Out into the many mountains in that direction. Somewhere along the line, the earth will curve away from that as you keep going out, out, out. And to the right of you, same thing, coming from the inside. And I'll let you do this on your own, just through all the things that ordinarily might feel like holds that hold us. Oh no, no. We can think through those. Up and down. Up through your skull and up through the ceiling. Way up through the branches. Clouds. Far as you can sense. And down. Through the earth, through the core, through the many layers of rocks. Going through the other side of the earth and out into the atmosphere there. as far as you can. And then we'll come back into the room. Maybe stand up with that new sense of your balance in all the different directions, and let those different things all come into you so that it sort of starts adding on maybe some diagonals in all directions. And so sense that imagining or that relationship to the space as you walk around your space at home, allowing all those directions to come with you as you let your eyes float and really see what you are passing by, maybe above and below you. Just have fun and take a little walk. And find your way back. And if you can just stand in front of your computers. We'll stay standing here for a moment or for a while. All right. So continuing to let that, those senses of your vestibular directions with you, they might float back up to thought. And now I want you to sense your feet on the ground. And then bring a hand up and just place it gently, just sort of so that the weight of your arm comes into your head. And just sense the top of your skull meeting your palm. And then sense that space of your feet on the ground and your bones coming up, leg bones coming up into pelvis, into spine, and the spine rising, coming up through your torso, all the way up to where your skull sits on top of your spine, which is right behind your nose. Sense that space between your hand on the top of your skull and your feet. That's how tall you are. And then you can let that go and bring both of your hands up onto either side of your skull and just let your fingers wrap around the beautiful shape of the bowl of your skull. And maybe with your hands, just move your skull around on top of your spine very gently. That's how wide your skull is. And let's bring our hands down, and you can put them on either shoulder or even put your fingers on your ribs here on the side. Just sense the space between your hands. Whatever you've decided here in the mid range on the sides. And then maybe put a hand on a hip and on the other hip. And that's how wide you are there. Taking a breath and noticing your ribs swinging out and maybe even widening your back as your hands are on your hips. Your elbows going one away from the other as you inhale. And then bring your hands down on to your thighs, however far where they land. And that's how that shape is. And if you can, put your hands on your knees. And if you can, on your calves. And maybe just take a little touch on your toes if you can. And then maybe a hand back here on your sacrum and the other one on your belly. And taking a breath there. That's how deep you are, thick you are. And then it's hard to do it on your upper ribs, but if you can, put a hand somewhere on the top of your ribs and then on your sternum. And that's a upper body thickness. Good. And then we'll just let that go. So that's part of your shape, part of what you have with you that we don't sometimes think about. All right, and we could take a seat again. And just sit with that for a minute. Just sit with knowing these really big directions and then also different shapes that you sense in yourself. And then going a little bit more internally, I wanted to, I know we've gone over this before for some of you that have come to my talks before, but I wanted to review what's happening when we're breathing. So one of the things that's happening is that our lungs are filling with air, and the lungs are like a balloon. So they are expanding in all directions all at once. And let me think. I don't have that book with me. But our lungs are from way down at the bottom, just inside the bottom of the ribs, and they come all the way up to the very tip of the lung, which is kind of pointed. I'm going to look for this if I can. It comes above the first rib, and the first rib is higher than our collarbone. The first rib comes above the collarbone. So the lung, when you're really letting enough in, or as much as you can in on an exhale, and you're breathing fully, it's coming above the clavicle. So I don't want to take too much time. I guess I should have had this ready, but anyway, okay, so let's just just thinking of our lungs filling in all directions, that means it's sort of widening the back as well. So when we're breathing in, notice that if we're not holding our ribs together with tight muscles or just even thoughts tend to pull ourselves in, the lungs are going to expand. So again, let's put the backs of our fingers on the sides of our ribs. And let your exhale out as far as you can, letting the exhale have a really long, its full length. And then on the next inhale, see if you can think and allow your ribs on the sides to move out so that the lungs can fill fully. And fill all the way up. And then when you let your exhale out, the ribs drape back in and the lungs get smaller with the lessening of that new air. Let's try a couple other breaths. Sense how your back is widening there as you think through that. And then draping back on the exhale. And then one other thing we'll do with that is if you can hook your two fingers, you'll find a bump there. That's where your collarbone is attaching onto the torso. That's where your arm is attached onto the torso. So we're going to hook our fingers right behind that. And just, you don't have to be choking yourself, but there is some space to hook those fingers around the back of the collarbone, clavicle. And now, as deep a breath as you can, go ahead and have an inhale come in. And if you've been able to let your lungs fill to their capacity, you might feel a little bulge coming up under your fingers. Don't know whether you can feel that or not, but that's your lung at the very top going woo, and moving and your hands float on top of that as your lung fills. Sometimes it's hard for some people to feel that, but it's so, I don't know, it's one of my pet things that I like to do. Yeah. All right. So that's one thing that you can allow for more space as you're breathing, if you think of it. And the other, we already talked about the ribs moving out of the way. The other thing that's happening is that the diaphragm, and clasp your hands like this and have some space like a little parachute. And then you'll have it like this right in front of your sternum, like at the bottom of your sternum. That's what the diaphragm is shaped like in general when you're on the end of your exhale. And on the inhale, the diaphragm descends and flattens out. That's on the inhale. And allows for the space in the belly for the lungs to fill. It gets out of the way. And on the exhale, it rises up again and domes. Exhale. Inhale. Space below and space for the lungs. And exhale. And one more time. Inhale. Descends and lowers, getting out of the way. And the lungs fill. And exhale. Good. So that's why we call it breathing coordination, because those things are happening all at once. And as the more you can let those spaces happen, the more full your breath will be, and the more reoxygenated your blood will be. And if we're lucky, it will influence our ability to have clear thoughts and as we go about our day, just a kind of clarity, because we are renewing our breath more fully. The other thing that happens, and we won't take time to experiment too much with this, but the other thing that happens is that on the inhale, the curves in your spine get a little curvier. And on the exhale, the spine kind of springs back into length. So inhale, the spine gathers in its curves. And exhale, it springs back into length. Maybe after this, if you want to experiment on your own, if you lie down on your side and put a pillow under your head, you can more easily feel at least the top of your spine. The lower part is a little harder to sense, but the top of your spine, you'll sense your head and shoulders coming together as the spine gathers on your inhale and then lengthen back out. And if you have a friend to experiment, you can put your hands on them, on the back of their head and on their back of their shoulders, and you'll see that happening. So that's all going on. That's all spaces that are happening kind of internally as we are including our vestibular spaces. So it's kind of like developing a relationship of ourselves, our internal spaces, in relation to our environmental spaces. And if we can have that play be in a nice balanced way, it really it just makes for a lively day, because there's always something that you can delight in as you even just look one direction or another. You see shapes, and then you're seeing from inside your skull. There's a couple other things that I wanted to just kind of experiment with, and that is sensing the bigger activity that our whole body is in when we're doing one simple thing. So I wanted to, again, let me look at my book. And I've talked about these muscles too, the latissimus and the trapezius. This is going to be for one of our little movement sequences. All right, so here is the latissimus, and this is looking at the back. This is a posterior view, and If I can get it, I can hold it. This right here, this bone right here that it's attached onto is our sacrum, and that's our tailbone. So this big muscle is attached all the way down on this flat bone. And then it's attaching on many vertebrae on the spine and fanning out across the back. And then if you can see where it's attached, this bone right here is our humerus bone, the top of what we think of as our arm. And it's attached underneath our arm. So what I want us to do is put one hand on your sacrum. Well, let's see. I don't know how put your right hand with the back of your right hand on your sacrum. If you can, if that's easy enough. If it's not, that's okay. Just think of it. And then put your other arm underneath, right on and the top in your armpit. And that is where the latissimus attaches. So sense the space between your hands. From all the way down in your sacrum to underneath at the top of your armpit. And switch if you can, switch sides. So that's for me. I mean, I think of myself as short, but I feel like there's a lot of space between my hands right now. And that's just one muscle that I'm identifying. So we'll let that go. And yeah, so let's do this. So we're going to start a little shoulder roll. And you can stand for this if you want. I'm going to stay seated because I don't want to keep changing the camera. So we're going to start with a small shoulder roll forward like this. And then I want you to let your arms just come along with that. You're not doing anything with your arms, but you're letting them respond to your rolling of your shoulders. And then I want you to let your arms kind of dangle and start to become a little bit more involved. So then your elbows start following the movement of your shoulder roll. And they keep getting bigger and bigger, like, oh my gosh, now I'm flying with my big latissimus. And how wide my wingspan can be. Yeah, here we are with our directions out to the left and right. And then let that settle down to more elbow and then back to shoulders. Great. Yeah. So when we start thinking about what actually is going on in our muscles, we can find some spaces that we may not have known were there. Let's put our thumbs underneath our both armpits. How we can kind of do the chicken walk. And sense that space between your hands now. And maybe see if you can find a little bit, like your fingers can, if they're just resting on your chest here. Start with breathing and notice that change in space between your thumbs as your ribs swing out. And then your fingers start to come apart too at the top of the exhale, and then exhale. Yeah. Good. And then let that go. Now let's think. Again, any of this can be done standing. But let's think of if you're sitting or if you're standing, your sit bones to the backs of your knees. And the space that there is in there. When you have the ends of the bones in mind. There's sit bones to the backs of your knees. It does make me sort of want to stand. I think I will. And then the backs of your knees to your heels. And if you need to touch both those things that I'm mentioning, you can, and then sense the space between your hands. Sometimes a tactile sense with your hands on both, like the back of the knee. I'm having my hand on the back of my knee and the other hand on my heel. So I'm sensing the space between there. And what about the heels to the sit bones? That seems really long now, whereas I often think I'm kind of short, but boy, I feel tall right now. And then sense to connect the heel to the toes, sense that space by even thinking or touching the back of your heel and then put your other hand fingers on your toes, on the tips of your toes, and sense the space between your hands. And then sensing or even touching your sit bones and the top of your sternum. And the sternum is here. So sit bones. And sense it. And then if you're actually touching those two spaces and then noticing the space between your hands, then when you bring your hands away, just sense that space staying there so that you can really take a kinesthetic sweep of that space. And then what about the space between the top of your sternum and your top joint? Where your skull sits on top of your head. Or even you could do your thumbs on your top of your sternum and then all the way up to this little flap, if your hand can lengthen out so that you can sense the space between this part and where your skull is on top of your head. Does it feel bigger than you might have imagined? Is there more space between the top of your spine and your sternum? Yeah. Good. And let's sense a couple other things. The tip of your nose to the back of your skull. And then maybe put a thumb on your chin. You could drop your jaw away from your skull. And notice the change in the space between your finger that's on your nose and your thumb that's on your chin. Good. Yeah. So when we just have a little bit of a moment to sense ourselves like this, and as we started, the bigger sense of ourselves in our environment, we can bring the sense of ourselves just in the world into a different, I don't know, different relationships inside and outside, and the spaces that are there. So let's come back to sitting here. Now I want to give you a couple moments to just play with anything that you found interesting or surprising. Just revisiting that. It can be from including the vestibular directions, front, back, up, down, out to the sides, and all diagonals that can be included in that. For all these little relationships and the breath. As you breathe, know that the outside is coming in and the inside is going out. We are literally in a relationship. There's no separation. So again, sense yourself and maybe think of what, if there is any difference, as I read from Walt Whitman again. Gently, but with undeniable will, divesting myself of the holds that would hold me. I inhale great draughts of space. The east and the west are mine, and the north and the south are mine. I am larger, better than I thought. I did not know I held so much goodness. If anyone has a comment or question, you're welcome to do that at this time.
Meredith, thank you so much. I always gain so much self-knowledge listening to you. Your last one you did on the breathing, like the exhale, you said go out, out, go out, out, out. And it's amazing how much is still in there when we think we're done breathing out. So thank you for the awareness.
Yes, you're welcome. It's often the case that we over focus on our inhale because we think that's what breathing is, but really the exhale gets overlooked. And in respiratory problems, or even just sort of like trying to get over a common cold, if we're not letting the exhale out fully, the bacteria that are sort of down in the little crevices, they just don't get out because we feel like our breath is compromised. So we focus on the in breath, and it's really the out breath that is going to make the difference when you include that. So thank you for noticing. And
I want to say that it was quite a revelation, to touch all the different dimensions like that, especially after doing that expansive, extending yourself as far forward and backward and up and down as,
yes,
and then to come back and feel how small. And I don't know, it's something I've never had an awareness of. And when I think about it, mostly it's in my head how I think of how I'm occupying space. But then I think even touching myself and getting that tactile version, I'm still only just constructing that in my head. What does that amount to? And, so it's like, oh, wow. Even there, it's a construct, but it's a totally different one. So thank you for that.
yeah. So it sounds like you have a lot to play with.
Yeah.
I'm putting in the chat, if anyone is interested in looking about breathing coordination a little bit further. I'm putting in the chat where would be some good sources there. Well, if no one else has anything else to say, I guess we can just appreciate yourself. And I do appreciate you coming today. It's always nice to see different people. And yeah, just to spend some time this way. It's really, for me, starts out the day in a nice way. I appreciate it. All right.
Thank you, Meredith. let's get back to Merit.
Oh, Teja, by the way, my sister said to say hello.
Oh, nice.
Just talking to her. Okay.
May the merit of this practice
May the merit of this practice
benefit all beings
benefit all beings
and bring peace.
and bring peace.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Have a nice day, everyone.
Yes.